Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be playing in the Concept 1B and letting you know why I think this is an absolute freak of a tank. But before I discuss about my subsequent opinions of the Concept 1B since my tank review of it a couple of weeks ago, let me talk about what the immediate plan is here on Live Oaks. Of course, the plan is that you have to win the dip. In my opinion, the team that wins the dip on this map will have a massive advantage to be able to dictate the pace of the combat and to just end up winning the southern flank and then eventually surrounding their opponents. This is the dip in question, and so as you can see, it's so important to try and get in there, but also to encourage your allies to join you. So we see my Concept 1B bombing it as quickly as I can into this dip and begging the WZ-120 and the Skoda T50 to come and join me, because the last thing that you want is to be caught in this dip by yourself. Now, the Concept 1B, with its 45 km/h top speed limit and a very impressive power to weight ratio of over 20, means that, yeah, you can actually go and contest these medium tank locations. Usually it's only the true super fast heavy tanks of the game, like the Object 260, maybe even the Object 277, and the IS-7, I guess, if it's able to use its top speed, but it doesn't have the power to weight ratio that this vehicle does. But by getting in here with that 45 km/h top speed, you can see I'm constantly looking around just hoping, please come into the dip with me, please come into the dip with me, because the last thing that you want in this position is to get caught out, and the enemies advance along here, or maybe even the faster vehicles will all in you across here, and then you're pretty much caught out. If the enemies do get to this position and you feel like you're vastly outnumbered, you do actually have one way to be able to sneak out here. If you reverse out here and keep your gun in, then possibly the tank destroyers in the location over here are going to be able to get a crossfire to help you out. But that's your last ditched attempt, and usually the tank destroyers in the area that you see the T49 on the map are actually going to punish you. Okay, so now I've told you all about this dip, let me talk about this absolute freak of a tank. And that is that it has standard APCR rounds with a great shell velocity, which allow me to pinpoint snipe at decent distances, even against moving targets, although its accuracy at 0.38 sometimes doesn't really work out for you. The vehicle's turret is an absolute troll. As you will have seen in my tank review, it is absolutely incredible and a tiny target for your opponents to be able to deal with. Just look at the front of this tank. What do you do against that? Well, really, you fire high explosive rounds at it, or you shoot it underneath the mantlet here, but you're going to have to have about 260 millimeters of penetration if you want to do that. So one thing that I'd like to share with you about the Concept 1B, now that I've racked up another 10-20 games in the vehicle, is boy does this thing not take artillery rounds very well. Who would have thought, if you basically try and condense your crew into a tiny portion of the vehicle, they must be practically snuggling inside this tiny heavy tank, that when you get hit by artillery, it's not going to work out for you. I've lost, is it 4 crew members so far, or maybe I was just greedy and repairing the stuns. But as you can see, that artillery shell actually knocked out 2 of my crew members, half my crew with a single shell. But of course, when they're so condensed inside the vehicle, it's not an unusual thing to happen on this tank. And so when all of you get this as your well-deserved reward for struggling your way through ranked, maybe you've got a few more grey hairs, maybe a few less hairs on your head, maybe a few more stomach ulcers from playing through ranked, you're probably going to have to end up using a premium medkit on this vehicle, otherwise you are thoroughly going to regret it. As you can see, boop, it looks like my driver is out of the battle once again. But I must say, a big shout out to this T44 for progressing the fight and making their way through towards the WZ-120, who the Renegade actually shuts down. But take a look at this turret armor. In fact, the only thing that's damaged me this entire game, yeah, you guessed it, has been the artillery. We bounced the 50-120, we bounced the SU-100 twice, and it's just the artillery that has been pummeling us. And that's because this is quite an easy tank to hit. Sure, it's going to be okay on a ridgeline, but it's quite a wide tank. It doesn't look like the hardest thing for a self-propelled gun to hit. And while its armor is incredibly well angled, and it does have fairly good side armor, it's not the super thick armor that you would have on, say, a German vehicle that does seem to absorb high explosive rounds better. I feel like the whole of the top of this vehicle's fairly weak, and so that means that you do take quite substantial amounts of damage from self-propelled guns, so make sure you're sitting on those ridge lines, going backwards and forwards, making yourself as hard of a target as possible to be able to hit. Alright, so I saw 5 tanks approaching my base against 2 defending tier 8s, and so I decided to use the mobility of this vehicle to get back to try and defend the cap circle, while I'm hoping that the big swath of vehicles, it looks like there are about 7 tanks there, should be able to win the south. Unfortunately for me, as you're going to see, the artillery does do an incredibly good job of slowing their advance, shutting down the T-49, but my Conqueror gun carriage also handles the Jagdpanzer 100. So I was expecting the T-110E5, the Object 432, amongst the IS-3 and the Revelries to go and pressure our cap circle, or alternatively make their way along the A flank, or the A line I should say. One thing I'd like to highlight in this game is just how awesome my artillery is. Do you see how the artillery is marking where they're pre-aimed? And that's so important to do with a Conqueror gun carriage. With that vehicle, you have a very long aim time, and your dispersion when you move the reticle around the battlefield definitely blooms it out. And so the artillery is going to have to be fully aimed at a target if they want to react to it and actually hit something by surprise or catch something that might be moving at least a little bit. So the artillery is constantly telling me where they're aiming. That's fantastic. Shout out to that artillery, and please, if you're an artillery player out there, use your T key more to mark the map to let your team know the reload at the same time, or alternatively, if you don't want to mark the map, I believe that you can press your F8 key, or alternatively you can hold down your Z key to use the reload command there as well. Plays like that give me confidence in the self-propelled gun. Immediately I'm more willing to spot for them. Immediately I think that, well, maybe this artillery is going to be able to actually help me on my flank, and that makes me more confident to advance as well. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm really actually quite happy that I avoided that southern flank and I'm making my way over towards the north, because they're getting held back, and unless we can develop a crossfire on our opponents, maybe get some more view range on them, it's definitely not going to work out. And so right now, boom, right where you want to be against a T-110E5, but unfortunately for me, the shell ricochets, and you can see that the T-110E5 immediately turned his turret around, which suggests to me knowledgeable player, knows where he got hit from, and he was immediately trying to address me. But to be fair, by turning his turret towards me, I guess who he thought was going to be a substantial threat, it looks like he actually turned his turret to a point where the T-28 prototype was able to shut him down. So great result for me, even though I didn't manage to get my shell in due to some bad RNG. By him turning around, it made him more vulnerable. So this is where the Concept 1B is great. Advancing aggressively, 10 degrees of gun depression, good enough, a fantastic shell velocity to be able to snapshot. I don't want to get bogged down here though. I want to try and keep advancing as much as I can, because I bet you the only vehicle that's damaged me in this game is about to damage me again. Yes, they are. I used my medkit instantly to get myself back into the game, so hopefully I can fight against this IS-3, but this fence and the bloomin' sandbags in front of me are causing me some grief. Maybe I should be loading a high explosive round here now that the IS-3 is down to a flat 100 hit points. Probably the HE round would have done good. Nevertheless, the Renegade manages to finish him off, and even though I'm up to 4,500 damage, I haven't actually managed to secure a kill this game. But with 2,000 spotting as well, I'm showing you that the Concept 1B is not like that traditional heavy tank that needs to keep trundling through its flank, and you can actually relocate, you can actually flank your opponents, you can change the whole direction that the battle was happening, and for me that's such a refreshing thing. Arguably pretty much an overpowered thing on this tank as well. I really don't think that heavy tanks should be able to go at 45 kilometers an hour with such an impressive power to weight ratio of over 20.5 per ton. The game is getting faster for a reason. Frankly, vehicles like this are one of those key reasons. Nevertheless, to not try and sound like a broken record, I have to admit it's kind of fun for me to be playing these vehicles, but it's not so fun when I do go and get in my super slow heavy tanks like my Mouse or my E100 and I'm getting outmaneuvered by the enemy team. Okay, so I feel as if I have an opportunity to breach in here now that the Object 261 has been shut down. Now this is very dangerous. You'll see that I'm actually using these bushes to try and hide from the 432 as much as I can. I need to get into this dip. I'm trying to stay as low as I possibly can along the ridgeline to give myself as much time as possible to be able to get into the dip to avoid the 5120 on my left. We're going to snap a shot in against the 430. We're actually going to low roll that. I go to try and ram him to lower his hit points down to below the 400 mark, so hoping that I'm going to be able to shut him down, and I low roll again for 341. Can you believe this? Even with the 93 ram, we leave him on 41 hit points. But whoa, my saving angel. Usually I would be unhappy about getting stunned by artillery, but that artillery knew that he would save me with that shell. Saving me from the bad RNG, saving me from the 432. Again, I have to highlight, I'm so sad that that is how lame World of Tanks is now with artillery shells. Sure, I like it when I'm not taking damage from artillery, but imagine what that 432 would think. Because he was in close quarters combat with me, he should be safe from the self-propelled guns. But he's not, because there's no team damage from self-propelled guns anymore. Definitely a concept that I don't agree with one of Wargaming's changes. But well, after having no kills during this battle, we seem to be mopping them up at the end with 2 quick kills in quick succession and shutting down the Su-130PM with our vision, giving the T-28 his second kill of the game. So, the Concept 1B on Live Oaks. Wow. This was definitely a concept that I could agree with inside World of Tanks, right? Well, not really. I'm being a bit conflicted in my opinion here. Sure, I love my fast tanks. I just don't really like the effect that they have on the game itself. But if you're a ranked player, you've been grinding your way through to be able to get one of these vehicles, I can tell you, yeah, this one is... I prefer it to the AE Phase 1. Even though that AE Phase 1 has that fantastic turret, I think to just be able to have that extra mobility really works out for the Concept 1B. It really is a freak though. Freak with regards to its mobility, freak with regards to its armor loadout, and also, or layout I should say, and also where the crew are going to be inside the vehicle. Its turret, the big bulbous butt of the vehicle as well. It is an absolute bizarre freak of a tank, but the more that I play it, the more that I realize that I might be a bit of a freak too. So an ace tanker for the Concept 1B here with 1,431 base experience points. That's decent for a tier 9 vehicle. A patrol duty medal. That's a bit of a bizarre one for a heavy tank to be able to achieve. But when you've got the speed, when you've got the 400 meters base view range, you can actually advance into those early positions to be able to enable your medium tanks to be sniping for you. We managed to plow 6,400 damage in this game, securing us a high caliber and also a Confederate medal for damaging 6 enemies that were subsequently shut down by our teammates. And yeah, we made a decent profit as well, as we didn't fire any of the heat rounds until our regular ammunition ran out. So 48,000 or 14 without a premium account. So that's it for today, ladies and gents. Hopefully you enjoyed this replay. If you did, give it a thumbs up. But if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you didn't watch my tank review of the Concept 1B, what have you been doing? Go and find out all about this vehicle so you can know what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are, and how to take them out effectively, considering that they're probably going to be hitting our garage in about maybe 3 to 4 weeks. And as I mentioned yesterday, daily QuickyBaby is back. I'm going to be trying to get my YouTube videos out every single day for the rest of 2020, as England is going to be in lockdown in 2 days from now. And so if for some reason you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you are so that you can get a notification whenever those daily releases go out. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.